Today, we are diving deep into Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. Now, this isn't just about understanding other people. It's about gaining a totally new understanding of yourself. We're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible patterns and the unconscious drives that are secretly shaping pretty much everything we do.
So, Robert Greene kicks things off with a powerful and maybe a little uncomfortable truth. We love to think of ourselves as these rational beings, making all these logical choices. But Greene basically says, yeah, that's mostly an illusion. The real reason we mess up, the source of our biggest blunders, from our careers to our relationships, it isn't some outside force. It's us. It's our own buried emotions.
And that right there is the big promise of this whole thing. What if you could actually see those emotional currents running just beneath the surface? What if you could understand why people really do the things they do, and, even more importantly, why you do the things you do? Well, today, we're going to build a toolkit to help you become a master observer of human nature.
Okay, let's start with the big one, the foundational law that everything else is built on, our own irrationality. Think of it like the operating system that's just always running in the background of our minds, whether we know it or not. Before we can even begin to understand anyone else, we have to get real about this fundamental truth about ourselves.
Greene calls this our emotional blind spot. And what he means is we are just profoundly unaware of how much our feelings are really in control. They're in the driver's seat. Our emotions color our thoughts, they steer our decisions, they dictate our actions, all while our conscious mind is sitting in the passenger seat, busy making up logical-sounding stories for why we're headed in this direction. The first step to clarity is just admitting this blind spot exists.
All right, so now that we've accepted that we're all a little rational, let's grab our first tool, and that's decoding signals. It's often way easier to spot these hidden forces in other people before we can see them in ourselves. So we're going to start by learning how to become better observers of everyone around us.
The thing is, people rarely show their true selves. We all wear a mask, right? A carefully constructed persona that makes us look competent, confident, agreeable. But our true character, our anxieties, our frustrations, they can't stay hidden forever. They always find a way to seep through the cracks. Your job is to learn where to look.
So where are these cracks? What are the giveaways? Greene gives us this fantastic checklist of behaviors that reveal those little fractures in the facade, those brief moments where the real person accidentally shines through.
And this is where it gets really practical. You gotta look for the mixed signals. When someone says yes to you, but you see their shoulders tense up or a flicker of a grimace, that's a moment of tension. Be a little wary of that over-the-top friendliness. Sometimes it's just a tool to lower your guard. And here's a huge one. Watch how people treat the waiter, or the barista, or anyone they see as below them. That is often the most unfiltered, raw view of their character you will ever get.
Let's see how this plays out in the real world. Greene tells this incredible story about Bob Haldeman, who was President Nixon's famously rigid chief of staff.
So picture this. A young staffer is interviewing with Haldeman. In the office, Haldeman is the picture of cool control, sharp, impressive, the perfect public servant. But then this tiny little inconvenience happens. There are no golf carts available for a quick tour. And in that one moment, the mask doesn't just slip, it completely shatters. Haldeman becomes, as the staffer later recalled, frantic, insulting, and almost hysterical, all over something so incredibly trivial. In that one single, unguarded moment, Haldeman's true nature was laid bare. A tiny bit of stress revealed a man with massive control issues and this hidden, vicious streak. The staffer saw this huge red flag, but he ignored it because he really wanted the job. Years later, right in the middle of the Watergate scandal, you can bet he regretted that choice.
Okay, so once we learn to see these cracks in others, it is time for the hardest step of all, turning that same unflinching lens on ourselves. And this brings us to our second tool, facing your own nature. This is where real self-mastery begins.
Greene talks about this idea of the shadow self. And it's basically all the parts of our personality we don't really like, or we find unacceptable. Our insecurities, our neediness, our darker impulses. The problem is we don't get rid of these things just by ignoring them. We just push them down into our unconscious, where they live in the shadows, just waiting to pop out in weird and destructive ways. But here is the absolute game-changing idea. You don't have to fix your shadow. You can actually understand it, accept it, and transform it into a source of incredible power. And there is no better example of this than the legendary actress Joan Crawford. Look, Crawford's childhood was filled with pain and abandonment, and it left her hypersensitive, full of sadness, and with this desperate need to be loved. Now, in ruthless old Hollywood, those traits should have been a death sentence, but Crawford was brutally honest with herself. She took that hypersensitivity and she turned it into this uncanny ability to sense exactly what directors wanted before they even said it. She channeled her pain into raw, authentic performances that audiences totally connected with. And that desperate need to be loved, she aimed it right at the camera, and it created this magnetic pull that you just couldn't look away from.
See, she didn't erase her shadow, she harnessed it. She integrated her weaknesses and made them the very foundation of an epic 40-year career. That is the power of facing your own nature.
And this brings us to our third and final tool, the freedom of perspective. Once you can observe others and understand yourself, the very last piece of the puzzle is mastering your own attitude. And this is maybe the most liberating law of all.
We so often feel trapped by our circumstances, our job, our city, our past. But Greene argues that the thing that truly traps us isn't the situation itself, but the attitude we bring to it. And the story he uses to illustrate this is just incredible. The life of the writer Anton Chekhov.
Chekhov's childhood was just brutal, marked by daily beatings from a tyrannical father. Then, at 16, his father goes bankrupt and flees, completely abandoning Anton to fend for himself. He's alone, he's poor, he's trapped. But in that solitude, something amazing happened. He realized that while his circumstances hadn't changed one bit, something inside him had. Without his father's oppressive presence, his mind suddenly felt free. The town that was once his prison suddenly seemed full of fascinating characters. His tiny little room became his kingdom.
And this quote from Greene just sums it up perfectly. Nothing on the outside had changed, only his attitude had, and that one internal shift unlocked his entire future. He vowed right then and there to dedicate his life to work and love, and to stop blaming or complaining forever.
This is the ultimate takeaway. When you put it all together, observing others gives you clarity, facing your shadow gives you self-control, but choosing your perspective, seeing the opportunity inside the obstacle, that gives you true power over your life.
By mastering these tools, you can make this fundamental shift. You can move from being a passive reactor, just getting tossed around by your own emotions and other people's actions, to becoming the active creator of your reality. You actually begin to consciously shape your experience of the world.
And so we'll leave you with this question. The world isn't just what it is, it's what you interpret it to be. Every single person, every event is like a blank screen, and you're projecting your attitude onto it. So the question is, what will you choose to see?